Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in. I am exhausted. I have been painting our chicken coop. I built a chicken coop last year last May during the whole COVID thing when everything was shut down. And we never got chickens. You know, they say if you build it, they will come. They never came. But we've got some ordered now, and I'm just kind of doing some finishing touches to it, and one of those things is to paint it. So I had my two boys out there and we painted the chicken coop. It was a mess by the end of the day. Well, I should say they were a mess by the end of the day, but we got it done. I'm tired, and I wanted to get a video in, and today I want to specifically talk about drop shots. I've got a lot of questions about what setups I use for drop shots, how they vary across the country where I'm at, some of the different baits I like to use, just kind of to give a general setup on the drop shot. And I've got a handful of tips too with respect to them, because it is a bait that we throw up here in the North Country all the time, year round, whether it's smallmouth or largemouth. I feel like I pretty much have a drop shot tied on every time out, and you know what? Like, everyone else has a drop shot tied on. So it's a big player up here. And, you know, the first couple of things I want to talk about are the rod setup. So I use, it's a MHX blank that I build. It's a specifically made to be a drop shot rod. It's their HMDS, so drop shot. HMDS 851.5. So it's only 7'1". It's a 1.5 power, a fast action rod. You know, I personally prefer shorter rods for drop shotting, shorter, faster action rods. A lot of the drop shotting that I do is vertical. You know, when you're fishing 15 to say 40 feet of water, you're pretty much right under the boat. And when that's the case, I don't like having a super long rod because it keeps my bait further away from the boat. If I'm fishing vertical, I like to have that rod, you know, lined up like right over the transducer. So I generally go with a shorter rod. I also like the shorter rod because I feel like I get better hook sets with that fast action tip. You normally with a light power rod, so 1.5 is a light power rod. The longer you go, the more bow you're going to get in your rod, regardless of how fast of an action rod that it is, just because it is such a light rod as a whole. So I like to go a little bit shorter, keep the fast action, keep most of that, the fighting in the tip of the rod. And, you know, that's kind of what I like. You know, you can cast it a mile. There's really no issues at all with it. I think, you know, that 7'1" length is perfect. For a reel, I do recommend a very high speed reel. I throw the Abu Garcia Revo Rocket. It's a super fast spinning reel. And the reason I do that is, well, it's two different things, two different presentations, but it's really for the same point. I want to be able to retrieve my bait extremely fast. So, you know, if I'm dropping down on fish, I want to be able to drop immediately. So if I made a cast, I want to get my bait in and drop down to that fish as fast as I can. So the high-speed reel allows me to get my bait in faster and drop. The other reason is because if I am casting, most of the time I'm not working the bait back to the boat. You throw it out, you work it maybe a quarter of the way back, a third of the way back, you reel up, make another cast. So when I'm doing that, I'm making a lot of additional casts because I'm getting my bait back to me faster. So it really, in both those presentations, it's all about getting the bait back to the boat as fast as I can and making another cast. And that's what I really like that Revo Rocket for. It's just a super, super fast spinning reel. It's the fastest one made as far as I know. So that's the rod and reel setup. I almost always will throw 10-pound braided line to a 6 or 8-pound leader. If I'm down fishing a little dirtier water, I might go up to 10-pound test, but normally it's 6 or 8. So one thing that I do like to do with drop shots, I will tie direct from my braid to my fluorocarbon, but I really like to throw a small swivel in the middle to tie onto that, and I do it for a couple of reasons. When I say small, I mean, I'm talking, so this is a size 10. I mean, it's tiny. I mean, this thing is probably, I'm going to say a quarter of an inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch. Super, super small swivels. If I really wanted to, I could reel that up my guides if I wanted to. I wouldn't recommend it, but that's how small it is. It's not a big swivel by any means, but I do it for two reasons. One, it's going to really cut down on line twist, and drop shotting is a technique that will result in pretty significant line twists at times. So I like to put that on, and I'll put that, I try to keep it about 3 feet above the bait. So, you know, it's long enough where I need to be aware of it when I am reeling my line in, because I don't want to reel it up into my rod guides. But at the same time, it's not like I have such a leader out where I can't cast it either. But I do like to use that. So it reduces line twist. The other thing I really like about it is, again, if you're in like a tournament situation, it makes you much more efficient, because I can have leaders already tied up with weights and baits, or weights and hooks, and then I just need to tie one knot to tie that pre-rigged leader to my swivel. And, you know, I'll usually have, if I know I'm in a drop shot tournament, I'll have 4 or 5 pre-rigged leaders with hooks and weights wrapped around like a chunk of those floating fun noodles, just to have them ready, and it just makes me more efficient on the water. So that's one other thing I really like about the swivel. So with respect to leader length, that's one thing that I think people don't pay enough attention to. I will go from like a 3-inch leader all the way up to 3 or 4 feet. It has to do with how I'm fishing, what my presentations are. I like longer leaders if I'm casting, because you have to be aware that, you know, if you're casting and you're fishing, say, 10 foot of water, the angle of your line is going to be much more parallel to the bottom of the lake, and therefore your bait, you know, you may have a 3-foot leader, but your bait may actually only be about a foot off the bottom, because your weight's here, your bait's here, and the boat is over here. So when I'm casting a drop shot, I definitely go with a longer leader. If I'm fishing around some sort of bottom grass, I like a longer leader because it keeps my bait above that grass. And if I'm fishing suspended fish, where I've got a lighter weight, you know, if I'm fishing, say, 40 feet of water, fishing fish that are in 20 feet of water, where I'm actually getting them to bite the drop shot on the fall, or I'm pendulating my bait through, I like to go with a longer leader to keep my bait further away from my weight. It just seems like I get more bites, and I don't get as many fish that are biting the weight as it's falling through the water column. So those are the times I like the longer leader. A shorter leader, the number one time I do it is if I'm fishing the Great Lakes and I'm fishing a goby fishery, because gobies will scatter along the bottom of the lake. They won't leave the bottom. They are always on the bottom. So I want my bait to be really tight. So I'll go with like a 3-inch leader. And then that way that bait is really kind of acting more as a goby than any other bait fish. So it works, a short leader works really well on the Great Lakes. If I'm vertical fishing, I'll go with a shorter leader too, because the opposite of when I'm casting, if I'm vertical, then I think the fish are on the bottom or a foot off the bottom, I can set my bait, and I know exactly how far my bait is off the bottom because it's right under the boat. So generally I'll go with a little shorter leader of like 12 to 14 inches when I'm vertical fishing. And then the last is if I'm river fishing, I generally go with a shorter leader as well. And that has to do with two things. One, if you've got a long leader, the current will pull your bait away from your weight. So if you're fishing an eddy and you throw your bait into the eddy, your weight might actually be where you want to be. But if you've got, say, a 2-foot leader, your bait may be pulled out of where that fish is holding. So I like to have a shorter leader when I'm fishing rivers to keep that bait in the strike zone. And the other is just because a lot of times in rivers, that strike zone is significantly smaller. So I want to keep that bait as tight to whatever cover that I'm fishing. So generally I go with a shorter leader when I'm river fishing as well. with respect to the knot that I use to tie my hook on, I just use an improved clinch knot, pretty basic, all-around fishing knot, nothing special to it, but I like it because it's not a big bulky knot, and you always want to take your tag end and go back through the hook eye, and then, you know, attach your weight under it. And when you do that, when you apply pressure to your line, the weight will apply the pressure for you, and your hook will stay straight out. So I think the improved clinch knot is a really good knot for that, because it's not some big bulky knot. It's easy for the tag end to come back down and through the eye, and it works really well with the drop shot. I really only go with 2 hook choices, guys. The just straight drop shot style hook, kind of a mosquito style hook. For anything I'm nose hooking, and then anytime I'm fishing a weedless presentation, I just go with it's the Robo Worm straight shank hook. That works great when you're Texas style hooking your bait, so it's a weedless worm presentation. And then from a bait standpoint, I've got 3 favorite go-tos. The Max Scent flatworm, of course, is a fan favorite pretty much everywhere you go. It's really underlooked at from a largemouth and spotted bass presentation. You know, everyone knows it as being this great smallmouth bass bait, but it really works well on spotted bass and largemouth as well. I've caught tons and tons of all 3 species. The Poor Boys darter, Erie darter, is a phenomenal bait. Again, it's a really good all-around bait. And then of course the Robo Worm pink, what is it, the Morning Dawn, 6-inch Morning Dawn. I mean, those 3 baits right there are my go-to drop shotting baits. I always carry some of those pretty much in my boat at all times. But yeah, guys, so that was it. It's a pretty basic presentation, but it's one that everywhere you go will put fish in the boat for you. It's really a presentation that if you don't have success with it, I recommend you doing it just to try to get some of that exposure to it, because once you do it long enough, you'll definitely start catching some fish on it, because it works everywhere you go. Anyway, so that was it. I hope that was helpful. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave me a comment. Let me know what your favorite drop shot baits are, or what some of the, your favorite hooks and different techniques are with the drop shot. I'd love to hear them. Thanks for watching, guys.